the victims of communism in Cuba, and we're also here to tell Raul Castro and his police and his spies and his corrupt party that the day is coming when there will be a free Cuba. And that day will come sooner than they realize. And if you'll excuse me, I'll say this and conclude by saying, Viva Cuba Libre! Viva Cuba Libre! Viva! Viva Cuba Libre! Viva!
And now we're happy to have John Suarez here with us up from Miami. And he's a longtime human rights activist for the people of Cuba. John, please.
Thank you, Miriam. I'm humbled to be standing here with such great champions for freedom like Lee Edwards and with Soleil Avila Leon, and listening to him speak about Osvaldo Payá Sardinias, also a young man who was killed along with him, Harold Cepero, who was just 32 years old in July of 2012. And I also remember, and I see her picture back there, the founder of the Ladies in White, Lara Payán, who died under suspicious circumstances in 2011. I also remember in 2010, Orlando Zapata Tamayo, a young Afro-Cuban bricklayer who died after a prolonged hunger strike. He was an Amnesty International prisoner of conscience. Today we've been listening in Miami to the families of 37 men, women, and children massacred in the 13 de Marzo tugboat massacre that took place in July of 1994. And finally, I see back in the corner a picture of Mario de la Peña, who was a friend of mine. He was one of the 4 members of Brothers to the Rescue, blown to bits over the international straits of Florida on February 24th of 1996. What was he doing there with his other compatriots? They were doing search and rescue missions for the thousands of Cuban rafters who were fleeing across the straits. And the regime's response was to plan their murder. And it was an order that was given by Fidel Castro and Raul Castro. Fidel Castro actually went out on the air and took responsibility for it at the time, when he thought that the lie that they were trying to perpetuate, that it was something done over Cuban national territory and that this was a group of terrorists, would stand. Unfortunately for him, there were survivors. There was recordings that the U.S. was able to release of the pilots not warning, operating over international airspace, engaging in this act of international terrorism. And I remember them today, and I think that it's wonderful that here in Washington, D.C. groups like Victims of Communism is constantly reminding free peoples what they have in these free societies and what we don't have in places like Cuba, North Korea, and China. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Soleil Avila Leon, who I'll be translating for. She is a victim of the communist regime in Cuba. She was part of the system, became a dissident, and was brutally attacked in May of 2015. So the crimes of Fidel Castro are not just from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, but they're still taking place today.
Bueno, ya fui presentada, todo el mundo sabe que soy Soleil Avila León. Tengo una responsabilidad muy grande porque estoy hablando por millones de personas que han sufrido la dictadura de Fidel Castro y son víctimas del comunismo castrense.
I've already been introduced, you know who I am, Soleil Avila Leon, and I have a great responsibility to speak on behalf of millions of victims of communism, which are the Cuban people.
Hablo por todos los ajusticiados extrajudicialmente por la dictadura cuando tomó el poder, por todos los que fueron traicionados, que murieron en el exilio sin poder ver la muerte de él ni la libertad de Cuba.
And I speak for all those extrajudicially executed at the beginning of the regime. I also speak for all the millions who have died in exile without being able to see freedom for their country.
Por los 11 millones de cubanos que quedan dentro de la isla, silenciados por el adoctrinamiento y el terror.
And for the 11 million Cubans who remain in the island that have been indoctrinated and are kept silent through the terror imposed on them by the regime.
Los miles que han constituido el cementerio en las selvas y en los mares huyendo de esa cruel dictadura.
The thousands who have died on the high seas and in the jungles, in the wilds, trying to evade that dictatorship.
Otros que han muerto en el anonimato, silenciado por la dictadura, como la joven Judith Lady López, que murió asesinada, apuñalada por ser testigo de que la dictadura castrense me mandó a asesinar.
And I also speak behalf of those murdered in silence and anonymity, like Eunice Lady Lopez, who was stabbed to death when she was warning me that the regime wanted to have me murdered.
Hoy me siento aquí como exiliada, pero no por temor a huir de los Castro, sino para tener esta oportunidad de seguirlo denunciando con la verdad. En mi bolso lo que hay son documentos de verdad, de denuncia contra ese régimen cruel y asesino.
And I stand before you today as an exile, not out of the fear of having to flee the Castros, but to be here to offer my testimony. I have a bag full of documents which validate what I am saying.
Le agradezco a todos el tiempo que han tomado escuchando. Una humilde guajira cubana.
And I thank you very much, humbly, for those who have listened to me, a mere Cuban farmer, Sile Avila Leon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sirle. As many of you know, El Sexto was arrested a few days ago, and his exact condition is unknown. And we have a letter sent by his fiancée that she wanted us to read tonight, and I'm going to let Joshua Dill, who's a staffer at VOC, read that.
This statement was sent to us by Alexandra Martinez, the fiancée of El Sexto. Danilo Maldonado Machado, also known as El Sexto, a well-known painter and graffiti artist, took to the streets when he heard the news of Fidel Castro's death. He did it in the name of Castro's countless victims, the ones who had been silenced, assassinated, stripped of their homes, malnourished, and held hostage in an island prison. But a few hours later, Danilo was kidnapped, beaten, and dragged across the floor. The charges on which he is detained have still not been announced. As we wait for Danilo's liberation and the liberation of the dozens of other democratic activists, this cruel and unlawful treatment is a testament to the fact that Cuba's communist regime continues to stifle the island's voice, committed to driving fear into its people's souls. Now more than ever, it is imperative to support those brave enough to speak out and to honor those who have given their lives in the fight for freedom. It's not creative to have fear. Fear affects creativity and liberty. This quote shows how Danilo Maldonado Machado, known as El Sexto, lives his life, regardless of his circumstances, and hopefully it can show the way for the future of Cuba.